What's up, guys? Brett Okamoto from ESPN, joined by Marc Raimondi, who, no, we are not in Singapore for UFC 275. We are pretty far away, actually, from Singapore for UFC 275. We did not make the trip overseas to see these fights. One of the, probably the only pay-per-view that we will miss this year. But the travel, I was coming back from a family vacation, Marc. You were probably coming back from some pro wrestling show that you went to over the weekend. So the travel didn't make sense for us. But excited to talk about UFC 275. We always do these previews on YouTube. Again, usually it's on the ground, but we still have plenty to talk about for UFC 275, Marc. And I will start with the main event. I think that obviously that is always the place to start, right? The main event is the big fight on the card. But you got into it with Jiri Prochazka. You really spoke to him about not only just this fight, but I really enjoyed that interview because I think Jiri, we're not used to seeing a title challenger for the UFC, be in a title fight on just his third fight. And B, I think the fact that he's from Czech Republic, he hasn't been on the biggest cards necessarily, or he just hasn't been in the spotlight. We don't know much about the guy. So what struck you about Jiri from your conversation with him?
You're exactly right, Brett. And that's one of the reasons why I was so interested in talking to him, because I feel like we haven't had like a full explanation of like who this guy is, you know, where he came from, what are his motivations. And that was my goal going to that interview, to kind of just find out more about him. So, you know, the fans, especially the fans in the United States, can find out more about him. I'm sure the European fans probably know a good deal, maybe even the Japanese fans. He spent a lot of time in Ryzen, but, you know, basically to summarize it a little bit, you know, here's a guy who came up and he was kind of a wild kid, said he was a nightmare for his parents, nightmare for his teachers, had a lot of energy, didn't know what to do with it, started getting into fights a lot when he was a teenager. He loved fighting so much. I mean, I'm talking about like just street fights, that he joined a hooligan group for his local soccer team in Czech Republic, where they were like staging 30 on 30, like, you know, brawls in the streets, basically, with these hooligan groups. And he was just constantly trying to find himself, and he loved fighting. And the idea of like, even like in those street brawls, he was trying to figure out, you know, through trial and error, how to win fights. You know, what is effective, you know, what is an effective strategy in these like crazy brawls. Eventually he found a more structured approach. And then kind of the key to him changing his life was he was given the Book of the Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi, the Japanese swordsman samurai. He was given that book and he read it, and it kind of changed his entire life. And it kind of like formed the code, the principles that he lives by today. He's not a crazy guy fighting in the streets anymore. He said he saves his chaos for the cage. And that's where it is. You know, he's been to Japan many times. He fought for Ryzen. He's been blessed by Shinto priests at shrines. He kind of follows the Japanese code, the Bushido code. That's kind of what he not just fights by, but also what he lives by. It's almost like his Bible, like the Book of the Five Rings is like his Bible, you know, his Quran, his Torah. It's very fascinating.
What a unique guy, man. And I don't think it's hyperbole to say, look, is this guy going to be a superstar for the UFC? We'll see. But he's got a few things going for him. I think one is what Marc was just saying. He's just very unique. He's different, you know, and that let people like different. They want to get to know about this guy. If you got something that's a little bit outside of the box, that's always going to catch people's eyes. But then his fighting style, man, his fighting style is very, very fun to watch. You don't know when and where it's coming, you know, and talking to some coaches about this fight is that that's the hardest guy to prepare for, man. When it feels like he doesn't even know what he's about to do, that is a hard fight to prepare for. And so I think when you look at the fight itself, you know, what is Glover going to do? I think a lot of us are talking about this fight as if it's almost like a striker grappler match, Marc. And I'm interested in that because I wonder, did you get an answer to this? Because Jiri was originally going to go to Arizona to train with Henry Cejudo, and there was even some talk about, hey, John Jones would be there, that'd be a natural training partner. Instead, he trained in a cottage in the middle of a forest in Thailand or something. Like what was, do you kind of understand like the training camp and what led him to this training camp for this title fight?
Yeah, so he actually did go down to Arizona to train with Fight Ready with, you know, Henry Cejudo, Captain Eric Albarracin, Eddie Cha. I think he was down there for about a week, maybe a little bit over a week. And I think what really changed things, and this is also the reason why Zhang Weili didn't train in Arizona for this fight, the fight got moved to Singapore. where it was initially there was talk about it would be in the States, or I think at even one point I think him and Glover were going to fight in Brazil. Yeah. So I think once that changed geographically, it didn't make as much sense for both of them, talking about Jiri and Weili, to go to Arizona for that fight. So they both. So Jiri did most of his training camp with his regular coaches, like the Jetsom team in Czech Republic, and yeah, he lives in a cottage in the forest. Jiri, not too many amenities. His friend told me that you can't even get to the place when it's snowing out because there's no road really. It's really just in the middle of the forest. So he did his training there with his team, and then the end of his training camp, the last few weeks, he went to Thailand at this new, I'm sure you've heard of it, the Bang Tao gym. I think Alexander Volkanovski is down there. I think Zhang Weili, I think Valentina Shevchenko was down there as well. Kind of an offshoot of Tiger Muay Thai. The Hickman brothers, I think, are down there. So that's kind of what he ended up doing for his training camp. I think more geographic than anything else.
Man, well, what an interesting guy, man. If he wins the championship, I think ESPN needs to embed you in his next training camp in a cottage in the middle of the Czech Republic woods. I think that's pretty fascinating. I mean, I don't want to move on from the main event without talking about Glover Teixeira. I feel like there's not a whole lot to say sometimes about Glover Teixeira because we know who the guy is. He's been that guy. He remains humble, so humble. I forget who was I talking to who said that they saw Glover recently and he walked in with just a ball cap and like rips in his jeans. It's like, you're the heavyweight champ or the light heavyweight champ, dude. You're the UFC light heavyweight champ. And he's just so nondescript. Everybody in the sport knows by now just how nice of a guy Glover Teixeira is. You think like every fight is just kind of icing on the cake for him now since he won the title at age 42? Like, I don't want to say it doesn't matter if he wins or loses this fight, but you get that kind of sense where it's just like, this is just gravy for Glover at this point.
I do think that. I mean, I'm sure like anyone else, he wants to defend the title, but he's even said in interviews, I think there was one with Guilherme Cruz from MMA Fighting, that this is really it for him. This is really his last year. He plans on, winning the fight, of course, on Saturday in Singapore and then defending one more time, maybe in New York and Madison Square Garden. And then that's it. I mean, so this is kind of his last run. So I think a lot of it is gravy. And look, this is one of the most down-to-earth guys in the history of MMA. I mean, just a regular guy. He told me one time that when he came to the United States, he lives in Connecticut. He was a landscaper, he was a gardener. Mm-hmm. And, even after his pro career, he was fighting John Jones. He would still go and do gardening, not for money, just because he liked to hang out with the other Brazilian guys and just, shoot the, what with them. And gardening is a hard job. My grandfather was a landscaper. That is a hard ass job. And Glover's just doing it for fun. That's just who he is.
Yeah, I ain't gardening for free.
Hell no.
I ain't doing that.
Even for money, Brett, I don't even know if I would do it.
So that's our main event, and I think it's an interesting one. And I do wonder what'll happen if Glover does win the fight. Is it going to be Jan Blachowicz next? Or would that be a fight that would even keep him around? Or could this even be potentially it? I don't know. We'll wait and see. But it has been fun watching Glover Teixeira become a UFC champion. Let's move to the co-main event, Valentina Shevchenko versus Taila Santos. I mean, Valentina Shevchenko, you talk about dominance. It's just, I have never met another fighter that is so married to the sport. I just never seen it. There's every other champion is you become a champion in the UFC and you defend your title once, twice, three times. I mean, you know how good you are. You know what your work ethic is. You are a special individual, but she stands out even in those special individuals. Like just the way in which she lives her life, you're just never going to catch her on an off night. Some of these other champions, as great as they are, you might catch them on an off night, just right. Because, maybe something with their weight or they, the partying got to them a little bit. The money changed them, the fame changed them, it's just something happens. This is a very hard sport to be perfect in for a long time, but just her lifestyle just leads itself to perfection in this sport. I do think it's interesting that Santos, from a betting standpoint, is the smallest underdog that she has faced since Joanna Jedrzejczyk. So even though she's not as well known, Vegas is saying she has a chance. What are you interested in about this fight?
Yeah, I mean, it's Valentina Shevchenko's show at 125 until proven otherwise. I do think Santos is a very solid fighter. She kind of came out of nowhere, but she has a lot of skills. I mean, she has power in her hands. She's got some good striking, but of course, that's also Shevchenko's big strength as well. There was a little bit of a travel hiccup with Santos this week. Nothing major, nothing that really took her out of it. She got to Singapore on time, and it was cleared up, I think, pretty quickly overnight, Wednesday into Thursday, by her team. Very small thing, nothing that would affect her, but she's on track. She's ready to go, and I'm told that she, weight is fine. So that's half the battle, getting there with Valentina Shevchenko. And look, it's a fight. we've seen a lot of crazy things happen, and Shevchenko's the favorite, but you just never know.
Yeah, yeah. I just don't see her as a champion that's ever going to beat herself.
Yeah.
You know, talking to coaches about this fight, they say, hey, just set a high pace. You know, like you said, anything can happen in MMA,
Yep.
and you increase your chances of something crazy happening by setting a high pace and creating chaos. So maybe that's what we'll see in Taila Santos. She is a very tough woman, and she is on a win streak. She deserves to be here. She's just facing a very, 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 very good champion, Valentina Shevchenko. Okay, we'll wrap up real quickly. Final thoughts. I'm sure we'll talk about this fight. You know, beforehand still, and then during the fight, during the night itself. This one could steal the show again. Joanna Jedrzejczyk versus Zhang Weili. All kinds of ways we could take this, but what are you looking for in this fight? What matters to you? What are you looking forward to the most?
Wish it was 5 rounds, like the previous fight, because that fight was the best women's fight I've ever seen in my life, and one of the best fights period I've ever seen. So I wish it was a little bit longer, but that's okay. I think that we're going to see a rejuvenated form of both these women. We haven't seen Joanna since that first fight back in March 2020. So I look forward to seeing, you know, where she is at, and really just a huge opportunity for both of them, because you know, as good as Carla Esparza is, I think that people think that there is the division is wide open right now. Whereas Rose Namajunas beat Joanna twice. She beat Zhang Weili twice. This is a new kind of a new life for the winner of that fight. That's number one contender, most likely whoever wins, and then they go and fight Esparza. It would probably be the favorite going against Esparza. Joanna's beaten her, and I think Weili would be the favorite against Carla as well. So just an enormous fight that the stakes rose even more a few weeks ago when Carla won the belt.
Yeah, my final thoughts on this one real quick is that I'm actually, you know what? And it was John Anik who said this, so I can't take credit for it. He said, I'm actually happy it's 3 rounds because they pummeled each other so much for the first 5. I think 10 rounds would almost be too much. Like 8 is fine. And I don't know if I completely agree with him, but I see his point, you know, and I do think that this is going to be a fight that sort of picks up where it left off. It's going to be one of those. And I agree with you 100%. The fact that Rose lost to Carla, I actually spoke to Joanna 2 days after that fight, and she said that it just uplifted her, you know, that she's in the middle of camp, you know, she's tired. She's like, the weight's starting to come off. And she said, I usually train twice a day. I don't know, maybe Joanna was embellishing a little bit. She said she trained 4 times that day, but she said the reason is that I feel like the universe is with me. Rose has lost. I have a clear path to the title. I've already beat the champion now in Carla Esparza. It just really gave her a mental lift. I think that that's valuable. We'll see, man. It's going to be a very, very competitive fight. We will watch it from home, as I'm sure many of you will, not be in Singapore, but very much looking forward to UFC 275. Keep it on here. We got a lot of stuff coming out on .com. We got interviews, everything else coming out on the YouTube channel and on ESPN Plus. So enjoy UFC 275 and come on back for some analysis afterwards. Take care.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.